is really looking at the current situation in this country has to, no matter what they may have thought before, has to now say, is the obsession and the repeated sort of commitment to competitive market mechanisms in the Lisbon Treaty, is this the way that we have to be locked in legally into those sort of mechanisms in terms of the future organisation of our economy if we sign up to Lisbon, because that's what will happen, right? So I think it's absolutely critical. For that reason we vote no. Just lastly, on the military side, again, Patricia's probably gone into it, but I haven't, quite frankly, because I've been so busy battling with the cuts and so on that are happening and trying to organise resistance to the cuts and the impact of the cuts in this country, studied closely these protocols and all the rest of it that they've put in. I'll have to spend the next few weeks sadly doing that. And I just want to say, I lament the fact that we're having to do this. I really lament it, because there are more important issues. What we should be doing is organising to respond to the economic crisis in this country. Quite frankly, I think the whole thing is cynical. I think this is a government and a political establishment that have made such an enormous pains of things, trying to desperately salvage their political credibility because they think they can win this and therefore restore their political credibility. But in fact, what they should be doing is dealing with the unemployment crisis, the crisis in our public services, and dealing with the mess they've made with the banks and all the rest of it. So I lament the fact that I even have to debate this. And insofar as we are forced into a debate, I'm going to say that again and again, I'd rather be talking about something else. I'd rather be doing something else. I'd rather the government and the political establishment expended its energy on the more important issues, which are dealing with our unemployment crisis and the economic crisis generally. But insofar as we're being pushed into this debate, and I have to say, studied closely, but as I understand the protocols on neutrality and all the rest of it, right? They're declarations, sorry. Promises, declarations, whatever, right? They're all, they make up new buzzwords and new categories for just about anything and everything that they're doing. But it is a joke, frankly, to talk about anything protecting our neutrality when we now have troops in Afghanistan, even though our neutrality is supposed to be safe, fighting a war that is a catastrophe, right? 7 or 8 troops in Afghanistan. Now, it's not many, but it's the thin end of the wedge. Why are they there? At the very least, it is just, now, they will say, oh, the UN mandates it. The UN supports something, does not necessarily make it legitimate and okay, and not in, outside our neutrality or something. I'm mixing up my words, but you know what I mean. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it in line with our neutrality if it's just wrong, right? The sanctions against Iraq killed 500,000 children. They were wrong. Good people in the UN left the UN precisely because the UN imposed those things.
Okay. Sorry, no, I'm sorry. I have to ask people. I have to ask before. Sorry.
I just have a question that when there's a no vote again, where do you stand? I mean, if there's a no vote, does it also mean that in 4 months after that we'll be asked to have another referendum on it? So how many no votes do we need to give them before they actually listen to us?
Well, can I just ask that quickly? If we vote, what happens is when the French voted no and the Dutch voted no, and then if the Irish voted no, all that's happening is we're continuing to operate on the existing treaties. You know what I mean? The Nice Treaty is there, so we just continue to operate that. Well, I think Richard's dead right. What you want now is a new treaty for a new time. So that's what happens.
But is something like that even on the cards? I mean, is that even suggested inside the European Union by other countries? Starting from scratch again, a more modern treaty.
Well, I would have thought that's what we want.
Yeah, but is it on the cards? Are people talking about it and structuring this now, or is it even in debate?
I think the process of debate is beginning, but they don't want that.
They're convinced we're going to get a yes.
Sorry, sorry for hogging there.
I mean, just to briefly respond, they are committed to this. The mainstream of the political establishment in Europe are committed to pressing ahead with Lisbon. But I think if Lisbon is defeated, even they will have to recognise that's the end of that particular kettle of fish. Now, there's no doubt that they will continue to come at it in different ways with the same agenda, but I think it's going to be a huge boost for other forces, some of which are represented in the European Parliament, and many, many civil society forces, trade union forces, some political forces and so on, and I think probably even the other side acknowledge the majority of people in Europe who have a different vision of Europe, and that, I think it's going to give them a big fillip to open up that debate. And I mean, there are many groups that are putting forward similar alternative views of a more simplified constitution. You know, most constitutions are not hundreds of pages of dense, convoluted writing that nobody can decipher. Right? Most constitutions are relatively simple documents that anybody can read. So most of the people are saying we should have an alternative, saying we should have a simple document that is general aspirations, general principles, and then the details of that should be worked out, if you like, by the elected representatives at any given point in time. So it's flexible enough to change as the opinions of the public change. And I think that's probably what most people in Europe would want, rather than to lock us into a micro sort of management.
Regardless of what is in the Lisbon Treaty, there is something in it that says from now on it's going to be self-ratifying. So it doesn't matter if we agree or disagree with what's in it. Whatever is going to come, we're going to have absolutely no control over. The second thing I'd like to say is on the guarantees, as Peter Bond has said today, they have got guarantees in relation to the Maastricht Treaty on workers' rights, etc., which were basically blown out of the water with the Laval case. So the guarantees mean absolutely nothing at all either. Like.
There are a lot of groups out there. Like, there are three questions there, just to take them maybe backwards. You know, is there a new treaty on the cards? A new treaty is not on the cards because at the moment they're desperate to get this through, because they know if this doesn't go through, there is a huge opening there, because I think for the first time ever you have an awareness in many member states of the European Union who've never had a referendum. The Dutch never had a referendum before. It was the first referendum on the EU. The French did have one on Maastricht. But there is an increased awareness of citizens groups in Europe. So, you know, our hope would be that everything is going to open up, and the process of decision making in the future would be much more open to civil society and not, you know, be exclusive just to the bureaucrats in Europe. And if there's a second no vote, you know, would we be asked to vote again? I actually don't think so, because as I said, for that reason, that there is too much awareness out there, and I don't think that it would come around to voting again. To come to the two other things about the Danish guarantees and the self-amending aspect of the treaty, the Lisbon Treaty, Article 48 of the Lisbon Treaty allows the treaty to be amended in the future by unanimity without coming back to the people. It does talk about that it must be in line with the constitutional requirements, etc., of the member states. But when you actually look at what we're agreeing to in Ireland, we'd be the only country that they're arguing, oh, it'll come back to a referendum, but it wouldn't. Because by accepting the Lisbon Treaty, we put into our constitution permission for any future government to agree by a unanimous decision to change the treaties. Therefore, if we demanded a referendum, the Crotty judgment is out of the water, it's finished, over and done with, because what we have done by enshrining this new principle into our own constitution means that we're giving permission to future representatives in Europe to decide unanimously that they want to change the treaties, and there would be no, if someone went and challenged it in the courts here saying we want a referendum, I doubt if the High Court or the Supreme Court would agree to it, because they'd say, look, sorry, you can't have a referendum, you've already given them permission to go ahead and change the treaties when you agreed to the Lisbon Treaty. So it is self-amending, despite their claim that it's not. On the Danish guarantees, the Danish guarantees were very different in some ways, even though, as Jens Peter Bonde pointed out today, that the guarantees were very weak and ineffective for Denmark. But our guarantees were even worse than the Danish ones, because when the Danes voted no to Maastricht in 1992, they got a protocol, which was a protocol is legally binding. It's not like declarations. The protocol did not come to a later date. But the difference between the Danish situation and the Irish situation is that the Danes, from day one,